Oh, and welcome to this webinar. My name is Dave Tyler. I'll be hosting this. We have some fantastic guests to talk about SoundFlow and Bounce Factory. We also have a bunch of people behind the scenes who are going to be there to answer your questions. So please, if you've got any questions and you're on the Zoom, then use the Q&A function. And then we'll either answer those as kind of just text answers. But if they're good questions for the panelists, and I hope there are going to be some of those, then we'll pass them on so that we can answer those live. So we'll probably have a kind of more of an interactive Q&A session towards the end. So if you can get some questions in for our guests, that would be fantastic. So our guests today are Christian, who is runs and owns SoundFlow, and we have Andrew Scheps, who probably needs no introduction. But having said that, I'm going to introduce them. So Christian and Andrew, if you want to turn on your cameras, and we'll just have just kind of say hi to everybody. So maybe just we'll kind of get into some more detail in a moment, but maybe just to kind of kick things off, the two of you, do you want to just quickly introduce yourselves? Maybe give us a little bit of, just tell us a little bit about what you're going to talk about today. So Christian, do you want to just start off with that?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Christian Scheuer. I'm the founder and CEO of SoundFlow, and I've been working on this platform for about 5 to 10 years, depending on how you measure it. So yeah, I'm excited to join you guys here and talk about how we can work better. Yeah.
Excellent.
So thanks for hosting this day.
Yeah, no problem at all. And Andrew, as I say, I'm sure you're well known to many of our watchers here, but if just kind of say hi to everybody.
Yes, hi, I'm Andrew. I make records, and in doing so, I run up against a lot of stuff. And I've just realized I think I've been using SoundFlow for 3 years now, which is kind of insane. But yeah, and it has changed my life.
Excellent. So Christian, actually, so before we kind of dive into too many details, do you want to just tell us very briefly what SoundFlow actually is?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that I would start with a question. Do you have ever had the experience of you get an idea, like you're working in a DAW in Pro Tools or somewhere else, you have an idea and then you want to quickly be able to do it, but you find yourself having to click 25 times with the mouse in all sorts of different small windows to get there, and by the time you get there you completely forgot why you were doing that or what you were doing. That's how I felt originally as I started out in film school and had to work on dial-up workflows all day long, making tons of small adjustments. And so, yeah, I constantly ran into this hurdle where I felt like the computer or, the software was prohibiting my creative flow. So SoundFlow is really the attempt to solve that by giving you more physical control over what you're doing. So if you felt like it would be great to have one button to send stuff to Isotope or open an Audio Suite plugin, render something, close it again, stuff like that is what you can build with SoundFlow. So it is what we call a workflow automation platform for creatives. It's a place where you can create macros, automations, and you can use it to integrate with Stream Decks, iPads, and Android devices to make things more physical again. Because the problem that I see is any UI, any user interface that has a necessity for you to use the mouse to do something, that just takes away focus. Anything that a mouse, like you have to look at where the mouse is going. But if you have a physical button, you can stay within the idea that you're trying to create. So yeah, that's really what it's about for me. It's not just about working faster. It's about making working with creative audio more fun and more intuitive, a little bit like using an instrument, or even in many ways making it a little bit more like the old school days with analog hardware, where if you wanted to do something, you would literally tweak a knob. So that's sort of the journey we're trying to go towards.
Sounds good. So just building on that theme, Andrew, so how did your experience with SoundFlow then kind of lead you on to create Bounce Factory?
Well, when I first discovered SoundFlow, there was one very specific thing, part of my workflow, which is just switching input on a track in my session without having to scroll it onto the screen. And I tried lots of other things to make that happen. In SoundFlow, I don't know, it took like 3.5 minutes and it was doing it. So that was my introduction to it. And then I was just hooked. And anytime I did anything that felt repetitive, I would stop and figure out how to make SoundFlow do it for me. Because as Christian's saying, when you're mousing around, you lose the visual cue and that can interrupt it. But even if you've got keystrokes for every step of a process, having to hit 25 keystrokes is a little bit better than 25 mouse clicks, but it's still a pain. So to be able to sequence that stuff and have one button to do all of that. And then I think for mixers, especially these days, and since Atmos Music has taken off, the number of mix passes you have to print for every song has just exploded to the point where I'm probably printing upwards of 30 passes per song to get the stems needed for Atmos plus the regular mix passes. And on a 12-song record, that's 360 mix passes. I did that math in my head live. And to sit there and print 360 mix passes, it's sort of the epitome of the monotony killing what it is you actually need to do, because right before each mix pass, you have to be completely focused, make sure exactly the right stuff is playing, is muted, all of that. And then you bounce it and you sit there and you check your email and you do a crossword puzzle. And then you got to do the next one. Plus you have to sit in front of the computer. So for me, it started off just as a personal tool to help me bounce mixes faster. And then it just grew and grew and grew.
Amazing. So we will come back to Bounce Factory in a moment and sort of dig into more what it's all about. I also just want at this point say, and hopefully you'll have seen this in your sort of invitation email, but we'll be giving you more information about it later on. But we do have an exclusive discount for the first year of Bounce Factory. So as I say, there'll be a link, QR code. So if you've got your phones ready a bit later on, we'll share that with you. So coming back to you, Christian, let's sort of dive into SoundFlow a little bit more. So you already told us about kind of how SoundFlow can automate boring tasks, help you be more creative. So how does can you tell us a little bit about how a new user kind of gets into that? Is that a long process to get set up?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it used to be honest. SoundFlow's been on a long journey. So if anybody on the call or anybody watching this have encountered us before or the app before, I'm sure some people would have potentially be scared away in the past because things were quite complex to set up. With SoundFlow 5 that we launched in January, and then that we've been improving upon ever since, it's actually possible to get SoundFlow set up in less than 10 minutes with the Stream Deck or iPad, and with a lot of pre-built content that we call our official Pro Tools integration. So let me share my screen and show you a bit of how that installation process works. Maybe quickly before we go into that, I also just want to highlight this new partnership that we have with Avid, which is obviously making all of this possible today. So in April, we entered into a strategic partnership with Avid, and the result of that is that a feature-reduced version of SoundFlow called the Avid Edition is now available for free to all annual subscribers of Pro Tools Flex and Studio, as well as everybody who has a perpetual license to Ultimate or Studio with an active support plan. And the instructions for how to get that are on soundflow.org/Avid. I'm sure if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask in the chat. So that obviously would be the first step to get access to SoundFlow. That's why I mention it now. But yeah, let's try to dive into SoundFlow here and how you get set up. So I'm just going to share our installation video. I'm not going to play it back, but just to show you, this is a 6-minute long video showing you how to get set up originally or initially with SoundFlow. And most of this is in real time. So we try to deliver on that promise to be able to get set up within the first 10 minutes. And so when you install the app, you'll be asked to give access to system preferences, and then you'll be guided through everything, including installing the Pro Tools package, which is our default integration, And then we have this wizard, which will open up to show you the different options of how you can use SoundFlow to control Pro Tools. And so we have built all these integrations so that they're very easy to get set up with. You can see here, there's a Stream Deck device from Elgato. So these aren't physical devices that we sell, but they're fairly cheap. And these are just a phenomenal way of interacting with Pro Tools through SoundFlow and really any other app that SoundFlow integrates with. And so during the setup wizard, if you choose that physical Stream Deck device, SoundFlow will connect to it and set everything up without you having to do anything manually. And it will even, at the stage of the installation, create all this content for you. So for example, this Finder deck, which has a couple of default things installed for you, like a button to open Pro Tools, for example. So, and by the end of this, you'll be guided through the interface. So I won't be going too far into all of that today. We have a lot of tutorial videos online that will explain to you how SoundFlow works. So today I just want to, show a little bit more of an overview, more like a teaser of what it can do. But yeah, this is more just to show you that all of this you'll be guided through how to get set up to try to take a little bit of that complexity away. And yeah, so this is how SoundFlow will look when you first have installed it. And I now in front of me have a Stream Deck, which is live here, and it's already connected. So I can click buttons to fire off macros. For example, I can launch Pro Tools or switch to it if it's already launched. And then what happens is if you select Pro Tools, or even if you just Command Tap to it. So if I Command Tap back to Finder, my deck will automatically update here. If I switch to Pro Tools, my Pro Tools deck will automatically come up. So I talked a little bit about, getting physical buttons, as a way to control Pro Tools. And I think that's why I really love the Stream Deck. But you should know that everything you're seeing here, all these buttons that can be, touched to fire off things in SoundFlow and eventually in Pro Tools, all of this also works on iPads, iPhones, and Android tablets and phones. So obviously for the Stream Decks, they're limited to the number of physical buttons, but everything you're seeing here can also be used on those devices if you don't own a Stream Deck. And if you have, let's say, an iPad Pro or something, or large tablet, you can have a lot more buttons. So all of this can be configured and customized just the way you want. But what comes out of the box when you just install it, those first 10 minutes, is all of these pre-built macros and folders and icons that we designed for you. So, there are functions for Audio Suite plugins to quickly open one of them. You can even click here to search through all your Audio Suite plugins. If you, let's say you want a Dynamics plugin, then you can search for categories as well here to quickly select something. And you can independently open Audio Suite plugins just by the click of a button here. And I can say close that again. I can choose to preview and render, etc. So there are in total over 1,600 of these macros already built for you. And through this primary deck that we've created, this provides just, the tip of the iceberg, really. So this is not necessarily intended for everybody to always stick to this layout. This is merely just a way to get you started. Then, of course, you can reorganize all this stuff. You can move buttons around, create your own folders, and combine this stuff as much as you want. Just a quick overview. So if you remember, I said all the way back, or I don't know if I mentioned that, but originally when I started SoundFlow, I just wanted a way to click the preview button. So of course that's here. That's something you use a lot in film workflows. You can go in and make changes to clips, set clip colors, like that. Yeah, and so this essentially covers a lot of the basic functionality in Pro Tools, but it gives you this way of selecting exactly what you want to work on. We also have, obviously, integrations with with Finder and other systems on Mac OS. So here's a nice workflow that opens the parent folder of the currently open session in Pro Tools in Finder. So that's just a nice way to integrate the two apps. I can just jump back like that. So yeah, there's a lot to uncover here. Of course, there's, as I said, over 1,600 macros. And some of this functionality even extends on what is already possible in Pro Tools. So we have the concept of temp groups, for example. So let's say you want to quickly group a couple of tracks together to make some changes on a single fader, for example, or otherwise, then you can hit create or delete temp group. So that quickly created a group called temp group. And I can click the same button again and it'll delete that group. So yeah, lots to unpack.
Yeah. So as you say, lots and lots of possibilities, and we'll a little bit later on we'll kind of have a look at the process of just kind of putting together your own simple kind of deck configurations and macros and so on. Just wondered if we could just talk a little bit about SoundFlow's App Store, and you've got an amazing sort of collection of packages available, once you sort of get going. Some of which are free. There's a load of amazing sort of free utilities, and then some of which are paid. And then, and of course, this is where we're going to find Bounce Factory as well. So, so before we get into talking about Bounce Factory in more detail, maybe just have a look at the App Store side of things so within SoundFlow.
Yeah, absolutely. So that brings us back to actually looking a bit at the UI. Let's see if I can move this zoom overlay. Yeah, so as you can see, the deck I'm currently showing here has been designed inside SoundFlow here. So I can move stuff around and it'll update immediately down here. We'll get into more of that later, just to show you how this works together. And for those who don't already know, SoundFlow usually runs in the background. So I can close this down here and SoundFlow will continue to work. And so to reopen that editor, as we call it, you just click here to open SoundFlow. And yeah, before I go into the store, just so people have a basic overview of what's going on here on this screen. On the left-hand column here, we have what we call packages. And so all of this content that you find, these decks, our macros, our presets, everything that you can find is organized into packages. So you can build your own packages like here, or you can install packages from the store. And when they're installed, they'll show up here under install packages. And so this is where we'll find Bounce Factory and where we'll be able to launch this from. We have our trigger system, which will allow us to make stuff happen based off of not just keyboards, not just Stream Decks and iPads, but you can, obviously just assign shortcuts to stuff. You can integrate with MIDI keyboards to, make stuff happen whenever you press C or something, or integrate with other OSC type devices, and a lot more complexity here. And the official Pro Tools package that we have, including all of these functions that I showed off before, they're all found down here under the SoundFlow banner. So, but as you said, Dave, a great way to expand upon what SoundFlow offers to you by default in this Pro Tools package is to go to the store, and that's up here. And in the store, we have several hundred free packages, as well as a handful of paid packages. So most of the content here is free with your SoundFlow Cloud Pro subscription, and is organized into various different categories to help you find the best content. So what we really recommend is to go to the staff picks section. So these are very well-designed packages that the community has responded well to, and that we recommend for you to try out if you feel like it would be helpful to your workflow. So obviously, Bounce Factory is one of those. We have a dialogue editing package for integration between the standalone version of Isotope RX and Pro Tools. So you can send stuff back and forth. The Melodyne helpers from Andrew were very popular before the ARA integration.
Exactly. They are now retired.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No,
we
it's
have
good.
we have our preference manager here. So I should note that anything you build in SoundFlow is stored in a cloud account. So that means when you build your macros and shortcuts, you don't have to worry about backing them up on a USB stick and carry them with you everywhere you go. You just log into your cloud account and you have everything with you.
I'm
And
managing
that
several
includes,
Pro Tools systems, so that was the first one I went for.
right. And this little app, I can install it here just to show you how that works. So it's very quick to install apps here. And then I can go in here and open it. And, or I could assign a keyboard shortcut to it, let's say Control P. And now that will work anywhere on my system. And here I can go in and sort of collect all the preferences in Pro Tools, store them into my SoundFlow account in the cloud. Then when I come to a new Pro Tools machine, I can just hit recall. And I didn't have to carry anything on a physical USB stick to facilitate that. So there's a lot of great content in the store. Staff picks is a great place to start. You can go to the newest category to see, what's been going on. Most popular, obviously, and then you can sort by different apps that users have made packages for, specific plugins, workflows, technologies, and even you can go down and look by developers. So you can find Andrew and see all of his packages here, which I'd also recommend. And finally, we've got what we call premium apps. And so these are either apps that you pay for upfront once, and then you have access to them as long as you have your active SoundFlow subscription as well. Or some of them will have in-app purchases like Guide-Align and Bounce Factory. So these are, apps that go the extra mile. These are apps that have taken months to develop or even years and have great UIs to really make it easy for users to just install and get started.
Fantastic. So I think that leads us quite neatly onto kind of moving the focus over to Andrew for a moment. So Andrew, you've got some interesting stuff to show us, but also you got a nice little video which
yeah, well, I've got a very technical overview because I think I can't remember all the details. So
yes, I was going to ask you a very technical question about your kind of motivation for creating Bounce Factory. So I think this kind of covers that off.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about bouncing. So I'll hit play and we'll see what happens.
Are you sick of bouncing mixes?
Yes.
Welcome to Bounce Factory, the automated solution for bouncing mixes.
So it bounces mixes for me?
Yes.
Does it bounce them without me?
Yes.
Does it solo and mute tracks?
You betcha.
Does it switch playlists?
Yes.
Does it bypass plugins?
Of course.
Does it bounce online?
Yes.
Does it bounce offline?
Yes.
Does it bounce stems?
Absolutely.
Does it poop rainbows?
Not yet.
Okay. Can it import the bounces into the session?
Uh-huh.
Can it put the bounces on new tracks?
Yep.
Can it put the bounces on playlists?
Sure.
Can it walk my dog?
Coming in version 2.
Can it export a copy anywhere I want?
Yep.
Can it message me when it's done?
Yeah.
Can it let me know after every bounce so I know what's going on?
Of course.
Will it open and close sessions?
Yes.
That sounds great.
Bounce Factory. Your mixes are ready.
So I would like to point out that is my wife doing all the really good voiceover, but those are not my kids. And it's not my bear either.
But is it your dog?
No, none of the animals are mine. My cats did not want to be in the video.
No animals were harmed during the making of this video.
No.
Good stuff. So obviously, yeah, let's kind of dig into this a little bit more then. So as you said, you kind of set out with this idea of kind of creating a utility, an app which enables or really sort of gets over all the boring parts of the bouncing process. So how did you expand that to get solving those problems? I mean, it's so feature rich. It doesn't It doesn't obviously just bounce. There's so much more. I think that the thing which had caught my attention, does it tell you when your mixes are done? Yes. Well, so yeah, tell us a little bit about some of
Yeah,
those.
well, I have spent a lot of time down little AppleScript black holes trying to figure out how to get it to text you. But it started off as sort of a faceless macro. It just was step by step. What do I do when I bounce? And then obviously you don't do exactly the same thing every time you bounce. So it had to become flexible even for it to work for me. And then I realized that what I was doing was getting general enough that it could actually fit other workflows if I put some time in and built an interface and really figured out how to do that. And so, well, here, let me share the other video if that's cool. Because I just, rather than me running it in real time, I made a video of, let me get rid of this. So this is just me using it. So I'm going to hit play. So basically you open up a session, you click take snapshot. So it's based on this idea of snapshots. And what a snapshot is, it's like a little mini save as of your session. It knows everything about the session, including plugin settings, automation modes, mute status, everything except for the audio itself. So it knows what playlist a track is on, but it won't like recall edits of audio, but everything else. And so when you take a snapshot, it gathers some information about the session. And here's me using it a little slowly. And then what it brings you to is this window, which you should recognize what's on the left here, because it's basically the bounce mix dialog. So I wanted to, rather than creating my own interface for how you would be controlling your bounces, was to go to something that every Pro Tools user knows. What it has, though, is a little bit of extra functionality, like you can import after bounce, and I think I do this in the video. But then if you're importing, that means you can export. So I've added some color coding so that if something is green, it's kind of the obvious setting. So the sample rate is green when it's the same as the session. You don't need to remember what the sample rate is, because like on albums I mix, it might be 12 songs and there are 3 different sample rates in there. And there's a button where you can just set it to the session sample rate. So all of these little tiny shortcuts. But then the big feature stuff is like, well, if you're importing it into the session, then you can export a copy. And then this brings up kind of that export clip dialog that you get in Pro Tools. But you get to set it all up at one time. You can export it as a different format wherever you want. So it's not just the bouncing. It's, well, what do you do with the bounces once you've made them? And that's really where I think it got powerful, was to be able to take all of these different pieces of the puzzle that Pro Tools lets you do one at a time and almost build like the macro of macros. And so you can be placing them on a track as well. I think I've set this up. Oh, no. Okay. So then it became obvious that I didn't want to take a snapshot for every single mix pass, because if I'm printing 30 mix passes, I don't want to have 30 snapshots. So this idea of having extra mix passes within the snapshot happened. And you'll notice I just selected 2 tracks. I'm clicking add solo pass, and that would be my acapella mix because they are VCAs controlling my vocals. But then also I want to do a pass with those tracks muted. So that is the instrumental mix. So just by selecting tracks and hitting 2 buttons, I've set up more passes. And now what if you have to do stems of every single lead vocal? You go into a little stems dialog that gives you some sort of global naming things that you can do. And then it will add the track name to the end. And if you want to clean up the track names, you can click here and there's the list of the tracks. And so if you've got .cm or .01 at the end of the tracks, you can automatically clean that stuff up. And so let me pause this for a second. So you can see I've got my main mix pass, which could be the main mix if you want to print that. Then I've got a solo pass with 2 tracks soloed, a muted pass with 2 tracks muted. And then I've got stems, and I don't know if you can actually read that, but it says there are 8 mix passes there. So I've just set up 11 mix passes while I've been talking about it. And that's literally how long it takes. And then when you're done setting up all your mix passes, you just tell it, go ahead, and now it's going to gather up all the information about the session. So this is where it's actually taking that snapshot. So you can still be tweaking the session and getting everything ready while you're setting up the mix passes, and then it just goes through and does everything. So here, I'll actually go forward here. So trust me, that's getting information about the session. So then once you've done that, you get back to the main interface, and now you can see that this is just a list of all your snapshots. And I'm showing it grouped. You could just have a flat list of your 35 mix passes per song, or you can sort them by song. And then when you delve into that, you can look at each snapshot. And then from there, you can decide what you want to bounce. You can either bounce one session's worth or just a few that are selected, or you can say bounce all, and it'll open and close sessions. It'll just go through the list, and it's smart about which bounce passes it will bounce last, so it leaves your session the way you had it when you started, not with some tracks soloed or a different playlist selected. It will bounce the sessions in order of sample rates, so you're not switching sample rates on Pro Tools every single time. And like we said before, it will text, email, or iMessage you after every bounce pass if you want, or just to let you know when it's ready.
Amazing. So how do you get Bounce Factory, and is there a way to try it out? It's a nice leading question for you.
There is, yes. So you get Bounce Factory in the store, and it's free to install, and you get a 30-day trial of the full version of it. And the two tiers, the second tier is not that limited. Really, all you're not getting, there are a couple of small things, but the main things are you don't get the messaging after each mix pass or after the job. And you can only bounce one session at a time. It doesn't have the engine that will open and close sessions. But other than that, they're identical. You can make 1 million snapshots and then just bounce them one session at a time if you don't need the other tier. But you do get the 30-day trial of the full thing to just sort of feel it out and see what you need. And once you're subscribed, if you are someone who produces records, so you're only printing stuff every couple of months, you can start and stop your subscriptions and things like that. And then you mentioned earlier that there is actually a promo for the people at this webinar. So there'll be here. Should I bring it up now? The QR code, the size of a planet. There it is. So if you scan that, that will take you to a page where you can get, it's basically a 20% discount on an annual subscription for either version. So no matter which one you go for, you get 20% off. And that code will work until the end of the month. So you do get a 30-day trial when you install it, but you've got what, 20, yeah, you got 20 days to check it out, to decide if you want to take advantage of the promo. But obviously it'll be available after that, but this promo is good till the end of the month.
Cool. So that's amazing. Thank you, Andrew. And I mean, it really does show the incredible things that are possible with SoundFlow. But I think also what we want to do, and I know that you're sort of keen to show this, Christian, is maybe showing how just even doing something simple and making SoundFlow a little sort of less daunting as for those people starting out. So there are these amazing packages which you can get, and they're going to really sort of they've obviously been designed by people who are trying to solve a problem, which is, as you said already, that's kind of where you started. So the fact that other people are bumping up against these problems, they're designing packages. So these are real world issues that they're solving. And I mean, I think I said to you, one of the first things I did when I installed it myself, I saw, there's an app that allows me to kind of bounce my stems out of Ableton Live and into Pro Tools. Really useful. So so taking a step back from that, do you want to sort of talk us through maybe to start off with just kind of building your own deck using some of those kind of pre-existing building blocks, and we can sort of take it from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me share my screen here. Yeah, let's go back to how we started with this. As we talked about, by default, you get the Pro Tools deck and the Finder deck in your account here under default package. And I just, I can drag and drop content and it automatically live updates down here. So this is a great starting point, but there's probably stuff here that you don't need. For example, I don't really work with MIDI, so I can just delete the invent section here, just hit the delete button, hit OK. So now that's gone, and I have a bit more room to fill up with things that I like. So for now, I thought that we should try to make our own deck and have this Pro Tools deck linked to that deck so that we have a bit more space to drag and drop some more content. And so whenever you want to add something new in SoundFlow, you click the blue new button here. And, you know, we can create macros and surfaces and all this stuff, but we want to create a deck. And you'll see they have these 9 small dots as their icon. So let me call this Christian's deck. And now if I want to add that to this main deck, I can just drag and drop it down here. Let me just call it CMS, my initials. And so now that already updated here on my Stream Deck, and I can click the button, and that really should take me in there. And what's happening is it's opening that on my other Stream Deck, which is out of view. So let me show you how you organize that. So when you have a deck selected here, you can see under device, it's been set to first available Stream Deck. And I have one right next to me here. So instead, I can make sure that it selects my Mark II device here. And so now if I click it, it'll show up, but obviously there's nothing on it yet. So a good first thing to do when you're designing a new deck is to add a back button so that you can get back to wherever you were before. To do that, the easiest way is to pin the deck like this. This just means that when I now navigate on the left-hand side, I'm still going to keep this deck open. So I can now navigate down here under Pro Tools, under Decks, and then find Navigate to Previous Deck and drag that up to the top left corner. And if I click out of pin mode, I'll be navigated back to where I was. So now on this deck, there's a back button that takes me back to where I was. So this is one way that you can build navigation. The great thing about doing it like this is that you can have all these decks that link to each other in different ways, and you can always get back. For example, I can get to the clip colors by clicking under colors and clip colors, or I can go into clips and clip colors. So these are just 2 different ways to get to the same deck. There's also a way to create folders, but we don't recommend that anymore because that doesn't allow this free navigation. So yeah, let's think about what we want to put onto this new deck.
Well, we have some, maybe an example of some utility or something, just using some easily programmed macros.
Yeah,
would be a good place to start.
I feel like just because I love it, I want to start with the preview mode, but there, where is it, right? So I don't know, there's
near and dear to your heart.
So one thing you can do is hit Command K, and that allows you to search through all of your commands very easily. And I just want to find Enable Preview because that's my favorite button. And I'll drag that up there. And I will find Disable Preview and drag that on there. So you can see how quick and easy it is to start populating your own deck here. And if I just unclick the pin, I can, still navigate around. And let's just double check that this works. Let's switch to Pro Tools, CMS, Disable, Enable Preview. So that's how quick, you can add your own content. So one thing that's kind of like all of this, or a lot of what I'm showing you here is also available through like the Avid Control app. A lot of what we started out with here are very basic functions. But I think I mentioned earlier, one thing that you might want to do is to open a specific audio suite plugin, choose some settings on it, hit render, and then close it again. And so you could either set this up for EQs or for reverbs or for isotope processes. So I actually created this preset just to test that this worked. But let me delete this again, and I'll show you how to set this up. So the process I want to automate is to, if I've selected a clip, I want to go in, open an audio suite plugin, go down, find the right one. So that's already a lot of my attention, being used on that. Then I want to make sure that all these settings are correct. So if you want to retain the handles, it's a good idea to choose create individual files and clip by clip here. So for example, if I want to process more than one file and I want to keep them separate, you want that setting to be set. And then maybe you want to set some other settings in your plugin. And so what I did was I just created, 2 presets here. Again, my initial, standard, and high. So just for a higher sensitivity of declicking here. Right, so what I want my macro to do is to open this audio suite plugin, set the correct settings here, choose my preset, hit render, and close it again. And if you had to make all this from scratch, that would be a lot of work. But fortunately, you can use SoundFlow's templates for this. So we have a template here called Open, Render, and Close Audio Suite plugin with a bit of documentation on it. And so what I'll do is hit Add New Preset, and let's call it Isotope D-click High. So I wanted to choose my high preset, just so you can see it's not using the default setting. So under category here, so this is all we need to fill out essentially. The options for how do I, what plugin should it open, which preset, and which selection here. So under category, I have to tell it what's the name of this menu. So I've set up Pro Tools to show me both, to sort this both by category and by manufacturer. So I'll just use the manufacturer name here. If you haven't set that up, you could use noise reduction instead. So I'm going to type Isotope, and it's important that I have the capitalization and correct and the exact spelling here. Then under plugin name, it's called RX10D click, like that, if I recall correctly. And the preset menu was CMS high. And then I'll be sure to select clip by clip and individual files. So if I just want to quickly test if this works, I typically just add a quick keyboard trigger, because that allows me to test this while I'm building something, and then I can add it to a deck when I'm ready. So let's just test if I had this correctly set up. Yeah, and I don't know if that almost went too fast, but we can see the sensitivity gets bumped up. So it does select the right preset, and we can see here both clips were processed, and it did do it clip by clip because they're both still separate clips. And of course, if you want to do this for a reverb, perhaps you want to keep it as a continuous file, the entire selection. So you have this full possibility of customizing it. Let's say that we want to add an icon to this just very quickly. I can go in and take a little screenshot and go back in here and paste it from the clipboard. And now my button has a fairly ugly icon. I can delete my keyboard trigger again. And now I want to add this to my deck, but I don't, if I now navigate, all the way down here, I sort of lost where I came from. So I can hit the back button here a number of times to come back to where I was. And then the easier way, once you have your command selected here, is to just click Add to Deck, and then select my deck here, hit OK, and now it just got added to wherever there was space. So now I have customized something. I can set it up here, and if I select here and click it, I now have a button that does all of that for me, and I built it in a few minutes.
Amazing. The in fact, I had a look around, and on the Elgato site, you can actually there's a whole bunch of preset Stream Deck buttons as well, so you can capture some of those and use them in yours as well, I guess. But yes, doing taking it from the icon just makes it nice and easy as you navigate your way around.
For sure.
So this is obviously you're can do some amazing thing with these the preset macros. So maybe we could talk a little bit about what you might be able to do if you're kind of looking at some next steps, and maybe Andrew can sort of jump in as well here. Just sort of think about maybe getting towards. I know that we don't want to make it seem too scary and so on, but I am by no means a programmer in any way, shape, or form. I've tried many times, and I've just decided my brain isn't wired that way. But I managed to even write some kind of simple scripts. And actually, we haven't talked about this by using the community, and actually the people putting sample scripts up there, and just by a process of copying and pasting and doing a little bit of searching, I managed to start creating things. So maybe those are two aspects maybe to discuss. First of all is the kind of SoundFlow community and people all helping each other, and maybe some of the ways you can get into kind of more complex workflows.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's one thing that I fully understand, that, what we're building here is a very powerful tool that tries to cater to, a lot of what I've shown is what you just get installed. And there might be people who just want to install SoundFlow and not spend a lot of time customizing it. And there'll be people like Andrew who'll spend 3 years working on it night and day, and everybody in between that. So we try to make SoundFlow match all of those different aspects. And so for what I just showed you is sort of the bare minimum of customization. It's like entering some input. Right after that, if you want to, quickly sequence a couple of commands, I can just quickly show you that. So that's sort of the next step in customizing something. It's sort of just doing some of these preset things one after the other.
Mhm.
So we could say, we could make one that we call declick plus color, for example. So now I click new and macro. So anything you want, sort of a sequence of events would be a macro. And so if I pin that here, I can navigate down and find the preset we just created for isotope. And I just drag it over. So now this is the first thing that macro will do. And now if I wanted to, let's say, process this with the declick preset, and then also add a green color to the clip afterwards to sort of indicate to me this has now been processed, it's as quick as doing this, right? And I can go out a pin here, and I can add this script to my deck, or this macro rather. And now I have, a button called declick and color. I can go in here and select it. And let me just see if I can show you. I'll now click my button here. It'll open up, run the declick process, and color the clip. So that's the most basic thing you can do, is simply sequence things. After that, you can start building more advanced macros. We have something called add action here, which is all of the raw building blocks that SoundFlow interacts with. And we've got hundreds of those. You can interact with files, you can interact with a clipboard, you can simulate keystrokes, you can send MIDI notes or CC values to other software. And it's fairly easily configurable, all of this. And then once you're past all of this, if you feel limited by not having logic, in this, if you feel like you want to make something even more advanced, then you can do scripts. And a lot of what you'll see in our forum is people copy pasting script code to each other. And that might seem scary at first, which is why we haven't really talked too much about it. But so essentially what you can do is you can start by building your macros like this, and then click convert to script. And now you sort of have that raw implementation as a copy. So we don't want to go too much into that, but just for those who aren't, feeling that macros are enough and they want to dive even deeper, we have full scripting available. And as Dave said, our forum is really integral to what SoundFlow can do for you. And you simply just click the forum button up here, and the forum will log in your SoundFlow user and open up in a browser. And this will allow you full access. And we currently have over 50,000 posts on the forum that's been contributed by the community and the SoundFlow team. And this is where we share, this is the open discussions. We try to share workflows, ideas, how can we implement them? And there'll be a lot in here where you'll see people, with scripts. So in case that scares you, stay away from the forum. But I invite people to come there and have a look around, and you'll find so many answers to questions you might have. And this is sort of the way that everybody who's sharing all these packages for free on our store, they learned how to build all this stuff through that forum.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth pointing out, you don't have to go somewhere else and learn how to code and then come back. You can absolutely just start within those forums and ask questions.
Yeah. And Yeah, it's as I said, like we try to cover that full spectrum of somebody just installing it and it just works, somebody who wants to tinker a little bit more, and then you want to hopefully you feel like, oh, this really helps me in my daily workflow, and then at some point you might feel it's worth it to invest that more time. But the reason why we have the store is to make it very easy for people who've spent more time diving into it to share this with people who've not yet spent as much time, right? So you can just find something that already works and install it. And then as you progress, you can sort of learn to build even more advanced stuff. And of course, Andrew is the current record holder of how to move from one end to the other. I think it took you 2 days to start scripting, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but it took it took 2 years to write Bounce Factory. So yeah, I mean, you can go as deep as you want. And I think what's great about it is there are geeks like me who've always sort of wanted to learn to program, but when you've got a goal in mind that is actually something you run up against every day, you'll work much harder to get there. And it just gives you so much motivation, and it's really rewarding to be able to move quickly if you want to. But like Christian said, you never even have to make any of your own macros. There is so much stuff available in the store and built in. You can absolutely just go with what's given, and you don't have to do any of it yourself.
Yeah. And I want to point out actually, all of this matches with each other, right? So Bounce Factory, by nature of it being built in SoundFlow, Andrew has provided assignable key commands. So if you open up, Bounce Factory, you can click around and mouse around in the Bounce Factory app, but that wouldn't be good enough for SoundFlow, right? We want to automate the automation. So to remote control Bounce Factory, you can have like the add mute pass button, for example, could be added to a deck, or you could assign a keyboard shortcut to it, or whenever you press the F key for some reason on your MIDI keyboard. So all of this is sort of tied together.
And those key commands were because of a feature request. There's a Bounce Factory forum, and there are lots of people making feature requests. And I'd say since it came out at 1.0, it's probably expanded by about a third, because there were people mixing entire live shows. So they want to set up a lot of mix passes for one part of a session and then just duplicate them down to another part of the session. And that used to be really difficult. Now you hit one button and it does it. You just select a different part of the session, say go. And names are retained, and there's lots of batch renames. So there are a ton of features that come as people sort of show me how they're using it. And just to answer a question that usually does get asked quite a bit, it will bounce online, it will bounce real time, and we've even come up with workflows for people who are driving console automation. So if you can possibly bounce it in Pro Tools, then you can automate it. So it's really kind of scary how far it goes.
And as Andrew said, a lot of that development has come from user requests. So if you want to talk directly with Andrew in relation to Bounce Factory, you can click the package forum button here. So just as I click the forum button up here to be directed to the full forum, which contains a lot of different categories on the website. If you click directly here, you'll be taken directly to the Scheps Bounce Factory part of the forum. And as you can see, there's a lot of different requests. And every time you see this little icon, that means Andrew has participated. So, you're very responsive.
I don't think I've missed any of those.
Right. Let's see if we can find one. No, yeah, you'll see like some of these become quite long discussions. And this is what we really, set out to build with SoundFlow originally, or what I hoped for would happen is it becomes more than just, one person wanting their computer to work faster, but it becomes a community where people honestly share with each other ideas for working better. And if we, zoom back to where we started, that's really the idea that there's no reason why all these, creative people constantly get hindered in that creativity. And there's no reason to, like, if we find solutions, we want to share them with each other. So it's great to see that this has become its own little sub community.
Definitely. Yeah, it's interesting. So there's a number of questions come in, but I just one which I hope is easy to answer, which I thought was a good one though, is based on our discussion here, it says I'm a rapper singer. Is SoundFlow easy enough for a novice producer? So I really hope that we've kind of answered that question by sort of showing where you can go from in terms of just literally, sort of using what comes with SoundFlow to then, sort of maybe customizing a little bit, but then start creating your own macros. So I think even for a novice, it's very easy to access. I think that would be my
No, sorry to cut you off. That
Yeah.
I would add to that, and I think in the past it definitely wasn't, but with SoundFlow 5, we did change that, and the way we changed it was to have all this content available, and to an extent, for somebody who's new to mixing in Pro Tools, I actually think this deck will help you discover features in Pro Tools you might not know about yet. So you can even look at it like that, and as I showed, it's possible, I think, to learn how to build your own deck. I did that in a couple of minutes here. And so if you rewatch that section, or if you find the documentation on our website, we have a lot of tutorial videos. I'm sure that would be quite quick to learn. But, of course, if you're starting out producing, I would recommend anything you can do to focus on making music. That's the most important. And so if SoundFlow becomes a distraction to you, then it's, maybe wait a little bit. But if you feel that, just having this visually in front of you, if that would help, which I think it would, then that's a good idea. And even, one thing is what we mapped out for you here, but even just discovering what's possible to do through all these functions here should hopefully, be yet another way to discover Pro Tools.
Yeah, absolutely. One interesting one, we do have a lot of blind Pro Tools users, and somebody says they're wondering if SoundFlow is accessible with VoiceOver on the Mac.
That's a great question, and unfortunately, it isn't right now, as far as I know. I haven't seen a lot of requests for that yet to our team. I think it would be possible for us to make that at some point. The technology we're using to make our own UI does support that, but I do think there's some performance bottlenecks. So that's the real technical reply. But yeah, today it's not supported like that. If there's enough requests for it, it might be interesting for us to work with that community and see if we could provide different content for them that was pre-built, if there's a need for that.
Yeah, no, we could definitely. I can steer you in that direction afterwards. We can talk more about that. One here I thought was an interesting one, where actually this is sort of two. I've split it up into two questions. So, does SoundFlow, does Bounce Factory work outside of Pro Tools?
No, it is Pro Tools only for now. I mean, it's built in a modular way that could happen, but yeah, it's all Pro Tools because that's what I use. So that's what I built.
Yeah. And then the second half of that was, does SoundFlow work outside of Pro Tools? So that kind of a prod to you, Christian, to sort of maybe expand a little bit. And I think you've shown already some applications there, but maybe just kind of to make that point.
Yeah, for sure. So SoundFlow is this app that runs in the background, as I showed a bit earlier. It runs completely independently of Pro Tools. It's not a plugin. It's its own app that you install outside of it. And Pro Tools is our main integration. It's been our main focus because that's where I originally, came from in my own work. But SoundFlow integrates with pretty much any Mac OS app that exposes itself to accessibility. So anything built by Apple, we can control. I showed before we can integrate with Finder. I can show a couple of more, examples. Yeah, maybe let me just show that. One thing we can do is we can, control window sizes, move stuff around on screen like this, which I really use a lot in my daily work. If I quickly want to have two things next to each other, that's one way to do it. I can take on my other screen here, I have our Instagram account open, and I can just quickly move that window over like that and make it fit within the visual space. And I can do this with any app, right? So any window on macOS can be controlled that way. I showed before how we can navigate, to a specific folder in Finder like that. We can also do stuff like, let's say, save session as new version. So this will open up, and unfortunately it'll fail because I went back and used an earlier version of this untitled session. So we'll just try again. So yeah, just to show you that this automation that happens in the pop-up window is actually happening in Finder or macOS provided dialogues.
Yeah.
And really it's, essentially because of the way SoundFlow is built, anything that has a UI can, be automated to some extent. So yeah, that's what we're trying to show off just by starting with the Finder deck here. But yeah, the best starting point, the most content that's already pre-built will be for Pro Tools and for Isotope.
But another good example of that is sort of part of the workflow with the music for Atmos is you make your ADMs when you print the files, but then you have to generate other files. So I have scripts that automate the Dolby renderer to take a folder full of ADMs and spit out other files. So yeah, you can absolutely automate it, pretty much anything.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, like if people want to, check it out here, if you go to the store and select by app, you'll find, different, some of these are empty, but you'll find different, for different apps, there's a varying, degree of content. There's a lot of great stuff for Isotope for sure.
Absolutely. So as we're kind of getting towards the end of the time we've got here. I just wondered, so whether, Christian, is there anything you want to sort of say to, obviously we've got a lot of people here are going to be Pro Tools users. They're going to be, on current sort of subscriptions and upgrade plans and so on. So yeah, what's the sort of the next steps for them? What do they need to do to get SoundFlow and get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I think I mentioned originally, through the partnership we now have with Avid, we've created what we call the SoundFlow Cloud Avid Edition. This is a version of SoundFlow that's free to certain users of Pro Tools. So those are everybody on an annual subscription to Pro Tools Flex or Pro Tools Studio, or anybody who has a perpetual license to Ultimate or Studio with an active support plan. And if you go to soundflow.org/Avid, you can read more about this offer. What you'll get through this is the Avid Edition, and then you'll get an extended 90-day trial of our full product. And that's because, of course, we're doing this promotion as a way to give more users access to the basic features in SoundFlow, while, of course, trying to expand our community and really get this out. Because I really truly feel like this will, help a lot of users. And so you can read more about the partnership, how to redeem your activation code for Avid Edition, and all this stuff by going to soundflow.org/Avid. Yeah, and it details all of this stuff. If you want to read more about how this compares to our other products and compare to find out which is the right for you, you can click on that link I just showed you, or click pricing and see our personal plans. And we also have business plans available for teams and businesses and larger companies. So yeah, there's a lot of good information to find on our website. You can also find the Avid Edition by hovering over product and click Avid Edition here. So obviously this is the first step to get that access. If you for some reason don't have that activation code and you believe you're entitled to it, then please contact our support by going down here. If you don't have that code because you don't own any of those products by Avid, then you can always start a normal 30-day trial of SoundFlow by clicking up here.
Excellent. And I think it's important, obviously we're doing this webinar, it's Avid's hosting it, and we've got you both on here. And I think it's important for us to sort of, as you say, we've got this partnership going, but I think this is something which is certainly going to, we want to continue and expand and really sort of explore the possibilities, of what you can do with Pro Tools and SoundFlow in particular. So with that, I guess, Andrew, do you want any sort of wise words to finish off with.
If you spend more than a couple hours a week bouncing mixes, you should at least try it. Because I don't know, it's anything that's soul destroying that you no longer have to do, it heals your soul. So yeah, I don't know. It's absolutely something I couldn't work without. And a lot of the other stuff that other people have built, it just, yeah, it changes your life. You really get rid of all the stuff that you don't look forward to. Session prep is, another one that can be very, very automated and stuff like that. So yeah, the keeping things creative, it sounds like a phrase and, is it true? But it is absolutely true.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure, Christian, that you'd completely echo that as well.
Well, I built it for myself. Like I may sound like a salesman now, but I built this for myself. For the first 4 or 5 years, this was just a me program. And honestly, the reason why this even became something that I ended up building into a product was after film school, I was concerned with, should I share this with the world and all my competitors and colleagues, and then lose whatever made me faster than everybody else and lose my edge? And I spent, I think 6 months at least asking people, what do I do? Because I already spent 4 years developing this, and it makes me happier. It makes me want to do the stuff that I'm being tasked with. And one of my colleagues eventually said, well, do you want to sit in your ivory tower and feel good about that you're, really good at shortcuts? Or do you want to build a global community of, people like you and sharing workflows with people from across the world? And that's why this is here now. And so, yeah, it absolutely changed my life too.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for both of you for joining us. I think this has been a great session. So, and thank you all for joining. Cheers.
Thank
Bye.
you, Dave.